All right, I could read you some statistics about pornography. 90% of children 8 to 16 have viewed porn, 70% of men visit a porn site in a month, and 25% of search requests are for porn, okay? But the reality is, that is actually a lie. That's not actually true. It's way worse than that. If you're really honest with yourself, you would realize that 95% of men are addicted to pornography. All right. Now, it's nothing to be ashamed of because it is so prevalent, but most guys aren't even admitting what their real porn consumption habits are. In fact, let me give you something else that's even more shocking. All right. You might think, oh, well, I'm just looking at some Instagram reels or some TikToks, and that's not really pornography. I'm not seeing any naked women on those platforms. Well, let me give you some news. That is pornography. In fact, it's actually worse than pornography. And the reason why is because, it's actually more appealing. It's more addicting. If you go to a porn site and you look up a naked woman, having sex, you can see that all day long. That's no problem at all. It's not even that exciting anymore to you, right? What's way more exciting? Oh yeah, looking at Instagram and seeing a girl that's not quite naked, that you can kind of barely see, when she bends over her down her blouse or something like that. Women on these platforms, they know it, and that's why they're appealing to you with that kind of content. There's a reason why OnlyFans has made so much money and become so popular, and it's because the women that are on that platform know that if they put some content on Instagram, in the Reels, or on TikTok, that it's actually gonna make you more addicted than regular pornography. Because if we're honest, okay, if we're truly honest with ourselves, there are no light consumers of porn. In this video, we're gonna go over 5 ways that porn destroys your brain. And I gotta tell you, all right, I was addicted to porn at some point in my life. I struggled the same way that you might be struggling now, or maybe you've made some progress in overcoming that addiction. In this video, I'm gonna talk about exactly what the 5 ways that porn is destructive to your brain are, but I'm gonna give you some hope. At the end of this video, I'm gonna tell you exactly how I overcame porn, how you can overcome porn, and how you cannot have this be something that's ruling your life again. Okay, so let's talk about the first way that porn destroys your brain. All right, so maybe you're struggling with social anxiety, right? I know that I struggled with social anxiety when I was a lot younger, and so many men today, they can't get over the social anxiety. Have you noticed that it is a much bigger problem than it's ever been in history? Why does it seem like every young man has some form of social anxiety, all right? Well, a big portion of it is because of pornography, right? Because what happens is, you see, if you are able to go on the internet, you're able to go on your phone, and you're able to see pictures of naked women and and what you want to see in order to get your gratification, then you don't really have the urge to go out and meet people in the real world and to meet women in the real world, right? See, if you didn't have that ability, if you didn't have the ability to just look at porn on your phone or on your computer, what would happen would be that you would have this desire to go and actually interact with real women, because that would be the only way you'd be able to get those needs met, right? But because you're able to just pull your phone out of your pocket, right, shut the door, get on your computer, whatever, and view this kind of imagery that throughout mankind has never been available before, it makes it so that you don't have to face these things in life. And when you don't have to face these things in life, guess what happens? Well, your social anxiety, it's not something that's just wrong with you. Everyone has social anxiety until they actually exercise it and face the demons that are holding them back in life, right? So you actually have to go out there and talk to women, right? But because you now have this buffer, you have this safety net, you have something that is meeting your needs at a lower level, you don't have to go out and do that, and so you have social anxiety, right? So if you stop viewing pornography and you don't allow yourself, then when you have this urge and you want to see a woman or you want to have that sexual experience, you're gonna have to go out into the real world and you're gonna have to go out and talk to women. It's gonna force you to develop the courage to overcome the social anxiety, which is just like a muscle, right? Courage is like a muscle, right? If it's weird that we say that young men today have social anxiety. It's almost like saying that young men today that don't go to the gym, that they're weak. Well, yeah, of course they're weak. They haven't gone to the gym and lifted weights. And so by default, you're born with social anxiety. We all are. We're all afraid of how it's going to feel and how other people are going to judge us. But if you don't go to the gym, you're not going to gain muscle, right? And we wouldn't say something was wrong with you. We'd just say, hey, you haven't lifted weights. If you don't go out and start talking to women, if you don't go out and start facing those fears and developing that muscle, then you're going to be weak in that area and you're going to have social anxiety. So there's nothing wrong with you, but the porn that you're consuming, right? Even if it's just, like I said, innocent, you think it's innocent, just looking at girls on TikTok or Instagram, right? All of that sexual imagery, it's making it so that you're able to get those needs met at a lower level, so you don't go out there and actually talk to women in the real world. Okay, the second way that porn is destroying your brain, this one you've probably heard a lot of times, is that it's destroying your ability to focus and it's destroying your motivation. So maybe you feel like you just don't want to do things in life anymore. You don't have the ability to focus on a task, right? So maybe you're trying to build a business or you're working on improving yourself in some way, but you find yourself going down the rabbit hole of porn every time you get in front of the computer or you whip out your phone because it's simple, easy gratification, right? And so what ends up happening is over time, as you continually do this, you're gonna make it so that your attention span becomes less and you're gonna need more and more dopamine in order to feel that dopamine rush or feel that excitement. Because remember, dopamine is the motivation chemical in the brain, right? Dopamine doesn't actually give you pleasure, but what it does is it makes you go and seek pleasure. And so the way that our brains are wired is that we're looking for novel experiences. We're looking for things that give us the biggest squirt of dopamine, right? And like I said, today, in society, you can scroll through TikTok or Instagram and see hundreds of women or thousands of women, or you can go online and look at pornography sites and you can see so much that the average man like 50 or 100 years ago would never see in his entire lifetime, you can see in a few minutes. What do you think that's doing to your brain? It's going to make it so that your brain now needs this huge rush of dopamine. It needs a lot of stimulation in order to feel that same dopamine. And so when you go to sit down and do some work at your computer, or maybe you're trying to start a business or you're trying to do something that's going to improve yourself, does that compare to the dopamine that you can get from this instant gratification? No, it doesn't. So what ends up happening is that stuff seems boring, you're unmotivated, and what happens is you become depressed. Okay, because when you don't have motivation and depression are very, very much linked, right? If you have motivation, you feel like you're accomplishing things in life and you feel like you're being successful and getting things done, you're gonna feel happy. You're gonna feel a lot better than when you're not doing anything. And so when you're looking at porn all the time and now your brain is wired so that you can't focus, what ends up happening is that now you get into the state of depression, a lack of motivation, and the cycle continues over and over again. Now, the third thing that pornography does to your brain and the way it destroys your brain is it trains your brain to the wrong reward system, right? So our brains are wired in such a way that we have a habit cycle, right? If you read Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, he talks about this, how you have sort of a stimulus, something, and then you have a sequence that you go through and then you get a reward, right? And that sort of ingrains something into your brain. Well, if you think about what you're doing when you're looking at pornography is you're basically training your brain with the wrong reward system. So when you're done looking at porn, right, how do you feel afterwards? You probably feel like crap. You probably feel like not only did you waste time, but maybe you feel dirty, you feel shameful, you feel like you did something that you didn't really want to do, okay? And it doesn't feel good. I don't think there's very many guys that are like, yeah, I look at porn and then, I jerk off and I feel fantastic. No, that's probably not how you feel. You probably feel an amount of shame, right? Okay, that's normal, all right? And again, I'm not trying to add more shame to it because, hey, like I said, 95% of guys are in the same boat as you. They're addicted to porn, and it really isn't your fault. It's everywhere. I'm just trying to help you to get out of this, okay? So here's the deal. So let's say that you do some activity, okay, that gives you a reward, because you do get a reward from that. So you do feel good initially, right? Okay, when you jerk off, and then what ends up happening is you're wiring your brain to something that actually results in a bad outcome. So now your reward system for your brain says, when I do stuff that's bad for me, when I do stuff that I don't like, that isn't me, that I don't want, okay, then I feel good, and so I want to do more of that. And so now you're basically training your brain to waste time, okay, to do things that you find shameful or that you don't find things that you're proud of, and now your reward system, you get dopamine when you do bad stuff. That's not what you want to do at all, and that's really going to cause a lot of self-destructive behavior. And you can probably see this in your own life. You can probably see how what you want to do now is you don't want to go out and do stuff like go to the gym or go for a run or go and talk to people. Instead, you'd rather play video games, you'd rather look at porn, you'd rather do stuff that doesn't make you feel good afterwards, because the thought of doing it does make you feel good. So your dopamine is wired to the bad thing instead of it being wired to the good thing, right? If you quit looking at porn, right, and you quit some of these bad things that wire the dopamine, then your brain would be wired to be like, all right, I get a reward when I do something good, when I go out there and I talk to the girl, when I go out there and I meet people, when I go out there and I work on my business or work on things that make me feel good. Now my reward system is wired to the right thing, and that's what we need to have in order to be successful. All right, now the fourth thing that porn does to your brain, all right, and this one is probably one of the most scary ones, but it is something that can be recovered from, which is it desensitizes your nervous system, okay, including your penis. All right, I can't say it any better than that, but there are many men, in fact, what's happening in society at large today is that it used to be that erectile dysfunction was a disease that men over 50 or 60 mostly experience. But now it's something like 20 or 30% of men under 30 are experiencing ED. And the reason for this is because of desensitization of the nervous system itself, right? So your sexual response, and then of also your member, okay? Because you're giving it too much attention, if I can be blunt with you, okay? So if you're consuming a huge amount of porn, what's going to happen is it's going to ruin your sexual experience with women, okay, in general, right? Whether you're in a long-term relationship, which again, that is going to be bad in its own regard, or you're single, what's going to happen is that you are going to set yourself up so that your nervous system requires a huge amount of stimulation in order for you to be sexually stimulated or to start to feel that sort of chain reaction that causes you to get hard and to get an erection, right? And so if you think about this, right, the opposite of this would be if you completely deprive yourself, right? So you can no longer enjoy the things in life that you enjoyed before, because this is what they call a super stimulus, right? It's not a natural stimulus that exists in the real world. And anytime we're exposed to super stimuluses, another one of them is fast food, right? When we're exposed to fast food, what ends up happening is that we overeat that, right? Because it's the kind of things that don't exist in nature, right? And it's the same thing with pornography or the large amount of women that you can see in one day with the advent of the internet and pornography. So you want to stop doing that so that if you abstain from it for long enough, eventually you'll hit a point where that nerve system, that sexual response is resensitized again. All right, the fifth thing that happens that really hurts you in terms of porn is that it ruins your sexual experiences. Okay, now this might seem weird, but the way that it ruins your sexual experiences is it makes it so that the sex that you have or the sexual experiences you have are not as enjoyable, okay, because they're basically kind of like what we talked about in the previous point about it desensitizes things, but it's going to make it so that that you're not getting the maximum experience that you could. So let me give you a couple of scenarios, right? So either you're in a long-term relationship or you're in a short-term relationship. Let's talk about a long-term relationship. So again, let's say that you're on a submarine for a year, okay, and there was only men on board the submarine. There's no women. There's no nudie mags. There's no way that you can see any kind of even alluring picture, right? No sexual imagery, right? For a whole year. Okay. Now, when you get back, all right, and let's say that you're with your girlfriend and you see her naked and you do the deed with your girlfriend, it's going to be a sublime experience. Like, think about it. If you've been deprived for that long, okay, and you haven't had any kind of imagery or any kind of sexual stimulation, it's going to be a wonderful experience for you, right? It's going to be a very high quality experience. Now, if you contrast that with, let's say that you're looking at porn and jerking off every single day, all right, and then you are with your girlfriend, and let's say that you're choosing one long-term partner to be with, you've sort of ruined the experience for yourself, right? It's not even about, a lot of people will try and guilt you and say, oh, like, what are you doing to your partner? You're ruining the relationship, and those things may be true, right? But I want to just appeal to you from a selfish perspective, right? From a selfish perspective, you are ruining your own experience. It's almost like you're going out to a steak dinner, okay? And, in one scenario, you haven't eaten anything all day, right? So you go to this nice restaurant, you take that first bite of steak, and it's so good, right? It's so good in your mouth, okay? And then you've got scenario 2 where you're eating junk food all day. You eat a bunch of candy, you're kind of full, you go to the steak restaurant and you get that steak, and it's really, it's still a good steak, but it's not really that good, right? And so my whole motivation for this is that, you are essentially ruining your own experience, right? So if you're gonna be, let's say, with one woman, let's say you're in a monogamous relationship, wouldn't you want that experience, every experience that you have, to be of the highest excitement level for you, that the most enjoyment that you could get out of that, right? And so if you think about that, right, what makes sense? It makes sense to not only abstain from pornography, right, but to not even really look at women at all. To really avert your gaze when you don't even want to look at sexual imagery. You don't want that in your brain. You want to be as little exposure as possible, so that when you do have the exposure of the one that you're actually going to be with, that is enhanced as much as possible, right? The same thing would apply even if you're in a short-term relationship. My main argument here is that it's just hurting your own pleasure, right? You're just sort of ruining things for yourself, just like if you were to spoil your appetite and then go out to a nice restaurant, right? You wouldn't want to do that. So it makes a lot of sense just from a logical perspective to do the thing that is going to improve your own experience the most as possible. All right, so I told you that at the end of this video, I would not just tell you the bad things about pornography, but how to break the addiction. So let's talk about a few strategies that you can use to break the addiction, something that worked for me initially and has worked for me for a long time and has worked for a lot of guys that I coach. First of all, the most important thing is just to realize that it will ruin your life, right? I went through these 5 points and talked to you about them and how it is destroying your brain so that you will have the knowledge of it, right? Just having the knowledge of it and understanding, especially that last one where I talked about how it's going to ruin your own sexual experiences. I feel like that's the strongest thing, that if you truly understand that, and if you really ruminate on that and think about that, you will realize that this is not something that I want to do. And the more that you connect it, you disconnect it from the moral aspect of it, right? Because a lot of people will, I don't care if you're religious or not, but from a religious or moral point, people will say, hey, you shouldn't do this, it's bad, it's a sin, right? And that's not really something that's going to motivate you, because even if you know something's bad, you still do bad things, right? But we tend to be motivated more from a selfish standpoint, right? So if something feels like it's going to harm us and it's going to ruin our experiences, then we're more likely to abstain from that thing, right? Just like you're probably not addicted to heroin. Heroin is pretty good, I hear, right? I mean, it's pretty fun. I haven't done it myself, but I hear it's pretty good. But I'm not going to touch heroin, and you probably aren't either, because you know how bad it is, right? What it will actually do to you, right? And that's why you haven't done it. I mean, unless you have, but whatever. My point is that once you understand just how bad something is, it makes it a lot less likely from a selfish motive that you're likely. So just thinking about this, maybe watching this video over and watching other videos like this may help you. The second thing is a lot more practical, okay? It's basically don't have privacy, okay? So if you think about it, right, one of the simplest things that you can do, there's actually a great book by Benjamin Hardy called Willpower Doesn't Work, okay? And he talks about, the main point in the book is he says that the easiest way to really, instead of using willpower, the easiest way to change your behavior is just to change your environment, right? I talk about this all the time, right? You are what you brine in. So if you remove your privacy, right? If you think about this, when you're looking at porn, all right, when you're jerking off, you're probably not doing that in a public place. If you are, then you got bigger problems than this video can solve. I can't really help you, but you're not going to do that in a public place. So there's some simple solutions to this, right? So for instance, right, let's say that you're working in your office or you have a room, you've got roommates, whatever. Get a glass door for your room. Literally get a glass door for your office, a see-through door, okay? if you do that, think about it. You're never gonna have the chance to be alone, right? Just think about how you can set up your environment so you don't have the chance to be alone, because you're not gonna look at porn when you're not alone, right? So you can set it up so that it's harder for you to be alone. You could set up a webcam that's constantly pointed at you, that's live, and you could have an accountability partner and say, hey, look, I've got a webcam here, so it's in my office, it's pointing at my screen, right? Whatever it is, I know some of these sound like silly things, but just think in your mind, how can you set up your environment to make it so that you do not have privacy? And the more that you do that, then you don't have to rely on your willpower and discipline. The third thing is to change your nature. Basically, your actions flow from your nature, and that really is your identity. And so as you watch more videos, perhaps on my channel, on other channels that are talking about masculinity and being a masculine man, and as you envision yourself as a guy who goes out, who doesn't have to look at porn or look at women, he gets to go and actually experience women, right? Who goes out and takes chances and goes and talks to women, and you view yourself in that light. You see yourself as that masculinity. In fact, that was the thing that really did it for me more than anything else. Is I remember reading The Way of the Superior Man and some other books, and I was like, you know what? Like, I see myself so much higher now. What I envision myself to be, and because I had that new identity, my actions automatically flowed from that. And so I didn't really have to try and stop consuming pornography. It just was, once I made that connection in my head that I was this man, like this was the man who I viewed myself to be, I stopped doing those actions. Just like when I saw myself as I've had a huge transformation in my life, right? From who I was before to the bulldog guy I am now, running marathons and lifting weights and doing all this stuff. But I was this geeky, dorky, socially anxious, awkward guy before, right? And I changed my vision of myself, right? I changed my identity to being this tough, masculine guy that goes out and runs marathons and kicks ass and does Muay Thai and kickboxing, right? And prides himself in being strong. And once I had changed that identity of myself, I started doing those actions and I stopped doing the lazy actions, right? So if you change that identity, if you change how you view yourself, it's going to change your actions, and then you don't have to try and stop doing things, because your actions are going to flow from the nature that you have within you, who you view yourself as. And then the last one here is to stop the shame cycle. Okay, one of the reasons why you stay addicted to porn and addicted to a lot of things is because you get into what I call the shame cycle, right? So this is pretty common in psychology. What will happen is, let's say that you're like, okay, I'm not gonna look at porn anymore, okay? And then a couple days later, you break down, all right, you're looking at pornography, all right, and then you start to feel bad about yourself. You're like, oh man, I'm such a loser, I failed, right? You feel bad. So then you're like, oh, I don't feel like doing anything except for the one thing that will make me feel good, which is to go back and eat your own vomit, right? Like a dog drawn back to its own vomit is to go back and look at porn. And now you feel good because it takes your mind off of how screwed up you are and how depressed you are, and then guess what? Now you feel that shame cycle again, which brings you back into it, and downward spiral you go, boom, boom, boom. So the way to stop that is to stop that shame cycle. Is to say, look, just like I said at the beginning of this video, right? I tried to tell you that 95% of guys are addicted to porn so that you don't feel singled out, so you don't feel bad about yourself, and it's not your fault. It is a sexual imagery. Now, you still have to take responsibility, but once you understand that and you realize like you're kind of set up to fail, and so you don't have to feel bad about yourself. Like, you want to do this because you know the benefits of doing it, not because you feel so bad about yourself. And so you kind of have to let yourself off the hook in a little bit. So what I mean is that, let's say that you screw up and you look at porn and you're like, you didn't want to do it. Just say, okay, have a little bit of grace for yourself. Just be objective. Don't beat yourself up. Don't shame yourself. Instead, just say, okay, why did I fail? Like, it's okay to fail. It's okay that I messed up. It's not that big of a deal. But why? Like, what was it? Was it my environment? Was it my mindset? What kind of things could I put in place to prevent this from happening again? And if you start thinking of things that way, okay, and this doesn't just apply to porn. It applies to anything where you're in this shame cycle. There's a lot of things that you could end up in a shame cycle with. It will break that cycle, and when you stop beating yourself up, you're gonna stop being drawn to the thing that made you feel the shame in the first place. So you just have to recognize that there is a cycle going on, and then break that cycle by not judging yourself. And when you do that, you're gonna have a lot more chance of escaping that downward spiral. Okay, now what I talked about in this video is just one way to ruin your life. By the way, if you found this video valuable, I would really appreciate it if you give me a like. If you just hit that like button, that really helps. Or if you share this video with someone who could use this advice, I would really appreciate that. But if you found this useful and this is just one of the ways that you can destroy your life, make sure you watch this video next on the 14 ways that you can absolutely destroy your life.